I know you're used to seeing me with lights, a crew, guest, an audience, but I'm doing what the CDC recommends. I'm keeping my distance for the health of our country. So that means I'm at home. I'm self-quarantined. I'm actually in my kitchen with a remote camera. My dedicated staff is all working from home, so we're scattered all over the city right now, doing all of this electronically. So it doesn't look as fancy as usual. I'm actually using my phone here, but I just could not sit still and do nothing. This is a very critical time in our country. I know it's a frightening time. I believe this is the biggest emotional crisis for our country since 9/11. People are afraid. People are confused. We've never gone through something like this in our lifetime. I certainly haven't. And all we can reference this to is what we've seen in the movies or on TV. So as grocery stores are being wiped clean of toilet paper and food, there's another product that people are stocking up on, and that's guns and ammo. People who normally have never even given a thought to purchasing a gun are buying one. But is panic purchasing a gun really going to calm your fears, or is it going to lead to the kind of outcome you want? Well, I wanted to call up someone that I could talk to about this, so I set up a Zoom video call with Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Now, LA County is the largest sheriff's department in the country, and we're talking about 18,000 employees here, and the sheriff has some very strong ideas about this, and I want to hear what they are. And so, welcome, Sheriff. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing okay here in Los Angeles. How are you doing?
Well, I'm okay. I'm following every rule and guideline that's being set out. I don't like them. I don't like being housebound. I don't like not being able to go to my favorite restaurant, but I'm respecting each and everything that's been set forth because I think it's necessary. So I'm staying at home and minding my P's and Q's.
You know what? You're doing what we would hope every single person in America does. That is hashtag flatten the curve right there. We need everybody to do exactly that.
Well, and I hope people understand that, because what you just said, flatten the curve, is even if we all wind up, or a big portion of us wind up getting this virus, if we can spread this out over time, over 6 months, 4 months, whatever, instead of everybody getting it right now, we're not going to overwhelm the medical system. We just have X number of beds and we have 2X number of people needing them at one time, then we're in big trouble, right?
That's exactly right. Our capacity is only so much. The surge capacity of all our hospitals is, we're trying to build it up as best we can in anticipation, but it only goes so far.
Yeah. Now, how's the sheriff's department dealing with this? Because you still have to do what you do. You still have to have the officers on the street, and you guys still have to meet and have your briefings. How are you guys doing this? And have you had the virus hit your ranks so far?
It's hit our ranks, unfortunately. We've already had, early on, we had 3 deputies exposed to a patient who ended up dying of the virus in Walnut, and we've had about 48 of our employees have been quarantined. Thankfully, no one has tested positive so far, so we're taking all the measures in that regard. But as an organization, we've done an awful lot of vacations, all the non-essential functions. If it's not patrol or if it's not running the jails, we've been canceling those out, so it gives us a lot of people now that we can throw at having a bigger presence out there in the community.
Right. And as we shut down now, in California, for example, here, we really have gone to a shelter at home and only essential trips out. Are you concerned about looting and that sort of thing when people aren't in their places of business and not even really able to go check on them the way they ordinarily would?
Well, we're increasing the amount of deputies that are out there in patrol. All the one-man units are now 2-man units, for example, and we're having a big presence in all the supermarkets, all the shopping centers where people are gathering to do that purchasing, and they're waiting in line patiently. God bless them. We're doing that, but we also have deputies that are out there saturating the places that are now abandoned, that are shut down, because we know there's going to be people that are going to be opportunists.
Right. And we've had kind of a real spike on people purchasing guns and ammunition, and in talking to the owners of the gun shops, these are not typical gun purchasers, a lot of them. We've got little grandmas and other people purchasing guns. It's kind of hit a fever pitch at times. How do you feel about that?
Well, you know what? People find security in owning a firearm, and I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, but we have to be a responsible gun owner. If that's something you are normally going to do and it's not a panic purchase, please, by all means, do what you need to do to defend your home. But you got to be a responsible gun owner. My concern, and it's a concern of every sheriff and police chief, is you're flooding the market in places that have a lot more people that normally do. They're not used to have a gun in that residence, and then all of a sudden have a firearm accessible to people that shouldn't have it. Maybe children, maybe the prohibited person that shouldn't have it, and of course people that are suffering from a mental illness, suicidal tendencies or thoughts. Having a firearm is not going to have a good outcome in those regards.
Right. And, to have if you buy a firearm, for example, in California, I think it's the way in a lot of states, do you have to have a license for it? Do you have to be trained for it in order to own the gun?
Yes, you have to have a mandatory waiting period. You have to pass a background check. You can't be a convicted felon. You can't have a mental illness. And you have to have a safety training. And all these things have to work in conjunction before you can take possession of the firearm.
Okay, so there has to be some things that you have to complete before you do it. So at least we have that. So maybe that'll make people think about it.
Yes, exactly. That's why the cooling off period in today's, panic purchase so much more important.
Why do you think people are panic buying these guns? What are they afraid is going to happen?
Well, you have an extreme range of people and different thoughts. You have your typical gun purchaser, but now they think of a potential of scarcity of resources and people maybe perhaps looting, or whatever the case may be, that somehow they're going to arm themselves. But in most states, having a firearm in public requires a concealed weapon permit, which you're not going to get into a store, with few exceptions depending on what your state law is. But in California, that's a far lengthier process than just having a firearm and had license to possess it.
Right. So I guess we're seeing people panic buying and hoarding groceries and toilet paper and things like that. I guess I've talked to some people who are saying that they think they're going to have to defend their stash of groceries and things of that nature. Surely we're not going to get to that apocalyptic sort of situation.
No, I mean, some might have a 5-year supply of toilet paper. I don't know why, but they are. But I don't think anybody's going to come and take that at gunpoint. So we're present. Our visibility in the public increased almost twofold now, and we're available at 911 call. We're there within seconds, almost throughout the entire county. And that's the same across the entire nation. Every police department, every sheriff's department, they're preparing. They have contingency plans in place, and we're working to make sure we have a very strong presence throughout the community.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break. Now, next, you bought a gun, so now what? The sheriff's going to tell you what you need to do to protect yourself and your family from the weapon. We'll talk about that when we come back. According to ammo.com, gun sales are booming at nearly a 70% increase from February 23rd to March 4th. Joining us on Zoom, I'm talking from my kitchen today because I'm following all the guidelines that have been set forth for shelter at home. So I'm not going to the studio. All of my very able staff are working from their homes. So I've asked the sheriff, Alex Villanueva, to join me on this Zoom call. He is the LA County Sheriff, which is the largest sheriff's department in the country. And we're talking about guns. And as I said, the sales have just gone through the roof. There's been a 309% increase in revenue, 220% increase in transactions, 77% increase in site traffic at ammo.com, and 27% increase in the average order. So people are buying guns a lot. And so I'm wanting to talk to the sheriff about what to do once you buy a gun. And Sheriff, you were very helpful in pointing out that just buying a gun is not easy to do, and there's a lot of requirements to be responsible in purchasing a gun, and then responsibility in owning a gun. And once they get this gun home, you recommend doing what?
Well, you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan of where you're going to store it. You got to have a plan of who you're going to authorize to have access to the gun. For example, if you have it in a gun safe and you have a combination, who do you give that combination to? Say a spouse gives it to the other spouse. Well, that's fine and dandy, but you have to know this in advance. Only the people you want to have access to the gun have access to that firearm. And part of your planning process has to be, if there is an emergency that you think you may need to arm yourself, the first thing you need to do is call 911. We got 900,000 cops throughout the entire nation, 18,000 law enforcement agencies. Somebody who is armed and trained, has all the resources, is the one you want going to your house, responding to that emergency. And then you can, at that point, you decide to arm yourself, but at least you know the cavalry is coming to help you. That's a very important first step.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, I'm from Texas, and we've always owned guns, and people in Texas are always gun owners and hunters and things like that. But the last thing in the world I would ever want to do is shoot someone. And it seems to me that if you own a gun, that's your last resort. Your first resort, as you say, is to pick up 911 and call a professional. Call somebody that knows what to do, knows how to do it, knows how to diffuse the situation if possible. Using a gun should be your last resort, not your first resort.
Exactly. And actually having a firearm and shoot somebody, an intruder in your home, that's a very devastating thing emotionally, physically. You're not going to want to live in your house anymore. I mean, there's so many things involved with this process. And then the issue is, was it justified? Did you take the necessary precaution? Was the person running away and you in the heat of the moment are giving chase and shooting someone who's fleeing? All these things are very important considerations. So it's not something that you should just, tread lightly on. You have to give it some serious thought, but get the preparation rolling first.
Well, and as I'm sure you know, I am a staunch supporter of the men and women in law enforcement that stand in the gap for us, so we don't have to take on the responsibility that you men and women do. And we can't thank you enough for your service and all of the folks that you have on your force that do that so we don't have to do it. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. And it is an awesome responsibility, and it's a very heavy and meaningful responsibility. And there are some other things that have happened with regard to this coronavirus epidemic that involve the jails and the prisoners and what's being done with them. And after the break, I want to ask you about what's going on with the prisoners, because we're actually turning some prisoners loose now and reducing the number of people that are being incarcerated because of this. And I want to hear your views on that. So if we can, we'll talk about that right after the break. The state of California has been told by the governor to shelter in your home. Now, what does that exactly entail? Well, joining me today is Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. Now, Sheriff, can you tell us what exactly that means? Because a lot of people are confused about this. I've talked to several people on the phone, and they're saying, I'm not sure what I'm able to do and not able to do. Can you tell us what y'all's interpretation of that is?
Sheltering in place or safer at home, all that means is go about your daily activities within the confines of your home. And if you need to leave it, it's for essential purposes. Go into the supermarket, go into the hardware store, gas station, maybe going to see a doctor, health practitioner. Those are the essential things. Outside of that, if you're a first responder, you're a healthcare worker, you have an essential function in employment, well, obviously you're going to go to your employment. But those are the ones we want to restrict all activity to. The rest of it is not essential, but you can go exercise, take a walk, take a hike, get on your bike, whatever the case is. The threat is contact with other people. It's not going outside, not going outside your home. It's just congregating in numbers. That is the threat.
Okay. And if you find people doing those things, what happens? Do they get a citation? Do they just get told to go home? What happens?
Well, we're looking for voluntary compliance, and that's where we need everybody to just work together and bear with it. The more we work together now, it saves us a bigger agony down the road. And then if someone is refusing to comply and they pose a threat to other people, well, then we can start escalating and get them to comply, or we'll take other necessary action.
So you're just trying to facilitate right now. You're not trying to be heavy-handed about this. You're just trying to get everybody to say, hey, come on, let's work together here.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all in this together.
Right. Now, I want to talk something about the jails because I've read in the media that you have started unpacking the jail some and have released a fair amount of prisoners from the jail because that's a concentration of proximity of people packed in together. And so you've released a fair amount of inmates. Tell me about that.
Well, our jail conditions inside the jail, we have the nation's largest jail system. And you have people that are in poor health in the average population, and they're in real close proximity. So you have the worst of two worlds together. So we're doing a very delicate balancing act between public safety and public health. And what we're doing is we're not going to release anybody who pose a threat to the community. Violent felons, all those people, they're going to remain locked down for the duration of this pandemic. People who are short, they have 30 days or less on their sentence, for example. Misdemeanor crimes, we're trying to prevent people from entering the system unless they're a violent felon. Then those, of course, are going to be booked as any normal operation. So we're reducing the flow into the jail, and those that are 60 and older that we can release because they're nonviolent felons, we're working on a way to get rid of them. And we've also then, the ones that have less than 30 days on their sentence, we also got rid of them. So we've been successful in decompressing the population while still maintaining the safety of all of those that are incarcerated who pose a threat to the community for the reason why they're in jail.
Mm-hmm. And your number of arrests have dropped quite a bit. The daily average arrests have dropped from 300 to 60?
Yeah, the bookings into the county jail have dropped that much. And that means that all of the agencies throughout LA County are doing a very good job. They're triaging the people that need to go to jail because they harm someone and they pose a threat to the community. They're still going to jail. We can also cite out other crimes, property crimes, for example, and they'll be dealt with at a later date through the criminal justice system. So we're holding everybody accountable. We're just making sure we use our resources wisely. Okay.
And you're watching the population and tending to their health, and you've quarantined people in the jail that have started to show some symptoms, correct?
Yes, we have 109 people in quarantine. We got 14 in isolation. So far, they've all tested negative. So they might have a variety of other ailments or flu they're suffering, but so far we've had 0 that have tested positive. And that's so far, knock on wood, we're doing the right thing.
You bet. So 109, 14 quarantined, 0 have tested positive. So
that is
right
correct.
Now you're clean inside the jail.
Yes, we're doing thermal scanning inside of our 2 jail hospital areas, and we're limiting any access to the jail. We have no more jail visits from the outside. So we want to protect a vulnerable population while at the same time we're protecting the county from part of that population in the jail.
Well, so knock on wood, as you say, we'll hope that continues. Hope that continues.
Yes.
Well, so many people want to help others in need, but there are scams to look out for, and we'll let the sheriff tip us off to those right after the break. The FBI and the Federal Trade Commission are increasing efforts to crack down on an explosion of scams related to the coronavirus outbreak. The rise in scams have come in the form of email phishing campaigns, fraudulent goods, and disinformation campaigns, according to a report from a cybersecurity company. Now, joining on Zoom is Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. So, Sheriff, we've got people out there, as they always do, when people are at their most vulnerable, they're desperate, they're looking for answers, and they're preying upon them. What advice can you tell people just generally to protect them from these scammers?
Well, there's a special place in hell for people like this. And for people to be on the lookout for them, just be aware government does not work on sending emails. We don't work with unsolicited knocking at your door, unsolicited phone calls. If it was unsolicited, red flag has to go up immediately. If you have a doubt about it, call your local law enforcement agent. Hey, I had this person on my door. Can you help me verify who they are? Most importantly, to never, never, ever let them inside your home. Don't let them distract you, because a lot of times they work in pairs. One person at the front door, the other person's at the back door going inside your house, cleaning you out while you're talking to the guy at the front of the house.
One of them now is the Southern California Edison scam. They're knocking on the door and saying, we're here to disconnect you for non-payment. So you got to pay us $100 now or $200 now. And people are falling for this. They're giving them cash on the front door, and they don't work that way. Southern California Edison doesn't show up and knock on the door and demand cash, correct?
Correct. Every transaction they do is via mail, and you can go online to your account with Southern California Edison, for example. That is the only way bills are settled. There's nothing ever collected in person for any of the utilities.
Right. And for more information about these possible scams, you can go to www.consumer.ftc.gov, and we'll put that up on our website so you can find it. And the tips from the FTC say don't click on links from sources you don't know, and watch for emails claiming to be from the CDC and prevention or experts saying they have some kind of cure for the virus, because we don't have a cure. We don't have vaccinations. And they're offering you vaccines, pills, potions, lotions, lozenges, or prescriptions for over-the-counter things that are going to protect you. Those just don't exist. So don't fall for that. They're just absolutely not there. Do your homework. And as the sheriff says, pick up the phone if somebody's on your front porch and call, because you guys will come and run them off, right?
We will do exactly that. In fact, they'll be gone before we get there, usually, because they know we're coming.
And a big flag is ever asking for these gift cards and cash. Either of those two things are big flags, right?
Yes, correctly. We only do business via check, account to account, online, through the website of the utility. That's the only way transactions are done.
Right. Now, Sheriff, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time here today. Is there any final message that you really want people to know and hear? For me, I've listened to this stay-at-home message, shelter-at-home message, and I take this very seriously. I'm following every guideline. I'm adhering to social distancing, self-isolation. I'm not doing anything that's not essential, and I'm resisting congregating with other people and trying to flatten this curve out. And I want to be a good example for that. I'm trying to do all of that. Is there any other message that you want people to hear from you? Because you're a powerful leader in this community, so I'd like them to hear any message from you.
Well, first, I want to thank you, Dr. Phil, for the message you're doing. That is a public service announcement. That is the best thing possible we can do. And I agree with you. My Instagram is at LACO Sheriff, and then hashtag flatten the curve. Exactly that. We're all in this together. And the more we work together to keeping the distance, we're going to minimize the spread. Eventually, the virus is going to die out when they run out of hosts. That's the entire idea of flattening that curve. So the more we work together, the reward is the entire time, the number of lives affected is going to be minimized. So let's get this together.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I've been concerned that the stress, the pressure, the fear, the confusion is going to create as much havoc as the virus itself. People panicking, suicide, depression, all of those things. And by us having this conversation and people feeling like, look, we're not in this alone. The sheriff and all of his people are there to help. I'm here delivering this message. I just want people to know that we're here. You're here, I'm here, and we care about everything that's going on in this community. And this will flatten out, and we will get back to our normal lives. This too shall pass. And if people know that and they feel that, from you, from me, and from others, I just think people will relax some and know that this too shall pass.
All right, that's an outstanding message.
Thank you so much for your time. And once again, thank you and all of your men and women in uniform for standing in the gap for those of us that need you so much. You keep us all safe and secure, and we really, really appreciate it. So, Sheriff, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Okay, we're back, and I wanted to answer some questions that I'm seeing just come through over and over and over again. And one of the main questions that I'm seeing is, why are we so concerned about this particular virus as opposed to others? Because we've had serious viruses in the past, no question about it. So why this one? Why all of this big flap? Why hasn't this happened before? Well, I made some notes about this from what I've gathered from talking to immunologists and molecular microbiologists, public health officials, looking at the research, taking all the politics out of it and just looking at the science, looking at the research. Why are we so concerned? Well, this is an unknown pathogen. This is not something that we've seen before. It's not even in the family of something we've seen before. And that means we don't have any immunity built up to this. So this is something new, so we don't have any way to fight this off. And it appears that this has jumped from the animal species to humans. And that's why we don't have anything to fight it off. And so it's spreading really fast. You might remember back in 2003 in China, there was the SARS, and it had a mortality rate of 10%. And this has only 3%, which is really bad. But the typical influenza, typical flu has 0.1%. So 0.1% versus 3% means this is 20, 30 times more lethal than flu. Because everybody says, well, flu kills a lot of people. Well, yes, it does, but it kills a fraction of what this virus seems to kill. Now, that number is going to go down as we find more cases, because a lot of the cases right now are unreported. So that percentage is up around 3%, but it's probably going to come down. And this is a virus that stays on surfaces for days. Now, that's not the primary way you get this. And people are saying, okay, exactly how do I get this? Well, the reason they've gone into this social distancing is because the way you typically get this is somebody sneezes or coughs and droplets. Whenever, sometimes people talk and they spit while they're talking, or they cough and droplets come out of their mouth or their nose, and they actually fly in and hit your face, your eyes, your mouth, or whatever, and it gets in. You have mucous membrane in there, which is a real damp membrane, and it just absorbs that, and it gets into your system. So the reason you've come up with this new term, social distancing, is because you can't usually project that far. So they say if you stay 6 feet away from someone, even if they sneeze or cough, it's not likely to get to you. It could, but it's very unlikely. But it stays on surfaces for a long time. It can stay on cardboard for not very long. So if you get things delivered to your house, it doesn't stay on cardboard very long. It doesn't stay on copper for more than 4 or 5 hours, but on steel or countertops or whatever, it can stay for 72 hours. So then you put your hand on that surface, then put your hand to your face, and it gets in your eyes or your mouth. So the reason we're so concerned about it is a new pathogen that we don't have any way to fight off, and it's transmitted by someone spitting on you, coughing, droplets, and it's highly contagious. So that's the reason we're making such a big deal out of this. We don't have a vaccine for it. If you get the flu, we have Tamiflu or different sort of things you can take, antivirals to fight it off. We don't have anything for this right now, and they are suspecting that any kind of broadly available vaccine is a year away. And that's why they're saying stay home, stay away from other people. So if we quit passing it on, it will die off. Now, another thing that people are interested in is whether or not you can get this and know what to expect. 80% of the people that get this have mild to moderate symptoms, and then they get over it. So if you're panicking and telling yourself that this is, oh my God, if I got it, it's a death sentence, that's not the case. It's not a death sentence. If you get this, you're probably going to be sick for a while, and then you'll get over it, and you'll go back about your life. But the problem is, if you do get it and pass it on to someone that is not well, they're elderly or they have some sort of respiratory disorder, their lungs aren't healthy, it could really have a very bad effect on them. So it's not just whether you get it or not, it's whether you get it and pass it on to someone that's not very well. And that's why all this isolation is taking place. They're very concerned about those that are in a high-risk group. And even if you're not in a high-risk group, you need to be aware that you could infect someone that is. So we have to be selfless here and take care of those that might not be able to fight it off as well as we can. Now, we also need to think about anxiety here. What if you're spreading your anxiety to others? Because people are confused, and knowledge is power. And that's why I keep talking about what the facts are, how you get this, how bad it can get, what the realities are, and blowing up some of the myths. You don't want to panic other people. And ask yourself, are you overreacting to this with your own anxiety? And are you whipping others up into anxiety? And if you are, you certainly don't want to do that. And you sure don't want to do it with your children, because they take their cues from you. So you want to be respectful of this and be serious about it. But don't get your kids freaking out because they see you freaking out. Show a healthy respect for it, and then calm down and make sure you don't get them where they become just terrified by something that you really can do something about. So can you actually influence this, or are you helpless? I'll talk about that when we come back. Well, I'm answering questions that I'm seeing come through an awful lot. I'm just picking those that really are frequent. And one of the frequent ones is how to help someone in a potential domestic violence situation, someone that is stuck in a mandatory quarantine situation, but you know that they're living with someone that has an anger problem, a violence problem. And I want to answer this both in this situation and kind of in a general situation, because right now, well, Illinois has just joined California and New York in being in a complete lockdown situation. So we have 70 million people now that are under a stay-at-home order. And you just know, out of 70 million people, there are an awful lot of folks that are living in a situation with an abuser, whether it's a child or in a marital situation, whatever, that there are people out of those 70 million that are in an abusive situation. You have to check on these people. You've got to listen to these people. You've got to be willing to step up and call for a welfare check for these people. Because trust me, the number one tool of the abuser is isolation. And now they've got isolation mandated. This is heaven for an abuser. This is a situation where they have it mandated to cut off their victim from the world. They have it justified where they can't see their mother, they can't go to their church, they can't contact people that can see bruises, can see black eyes, can see the things that would be red flag warnings to others to step in and intervene for them. So listen to your gut. If you know that someone's in a situation that you have suspected that they're in trouble before, take the initiative. Read between the lines, listen, call. And if for some reason you just can't seem to get them on the phone, they're always busy when you call, and the suspected abuser is the one that answers the phone or no one answers, then you do need to ask for a welfare check. And here's how you do that. You call the sheriff's department and you simply tell them, look, I have a friend that I believe is in a very high risk situation. I have a situation where children, I fear, are being abused. I don't know that, I can't prove that, but I'm just telling you what I fear. And so I'm asking for a welfare check. They will keep you anonymous. They won't disclose who you are, but they will show up unannounced. They will knock on the door, and they will demand access to the home where they can check, and they will demand to see the children, they will demand to see the wife, and they will demand to see them outside the presence of the suspected abuser. And if there is evidence, they will remove them from the home. They will take them safely away, and they'll take them to a shelter for women and children that are being abused. That's exactly the kind of organization that When Georgia Smiled, my wife's foundation, supports. So you're not helpless here. You can help those people. Ask for a welfare check if you have to, but call, check on them, listen to what you're hearing. Don't leave those people stranded. Let them know that you're out there. I'll answer one more question when we come back. Well, we're back. I said I was going to answer one more question, and one of the ones that's coming up an awful lot is how to talk to the children about this, because they're really confused and they don't understand. And I'm just going to give you a few points here. Number one, it's really important to meet your child where they are in their knowledge. Don't assume what they know. Don't assume they know a lot. Don't assume they know a little. Ask them what they know. Listen to what they know and meet them at that point and build from there. And they'll tell you what they understand, and then you can blow up any myths that they're embracing. You can take away any misunderstandings that they have. So ask them what they know and give them whatever explanations they can handle based on the language they're using. That's very, very important. And don't try to say, oh, you're silly to be concerned about this. That's the last thing you want to do, is make them feel silly. Say, oh, listen, I understand. This is different. This is very concerning, and I'm concerned too, but we're not helpless here. We have tools. And when it comes to like hand washing, that sort of thing, make it a game. Let's see who can get our foam the biggest. You know, let's get side by side and see who can get the biggest foam in washing our hands. Sing a song with them while they're doing it. It doesn't have to be morbid all of the time. Work with your children and explain what they need to understand, and make everything that you can a ritual, a game where you do it with them. And make sure when they're watching television that you're there with them. You're watching that television with them so you can explain anything that they might see that could be scary to them. Don't let them watch that news by themselves if they're 10 years, 11 years, 12 years old. Be sure you're watching it with them to explain. Now, listen, we're getting more and more restricted every step of the way. There's real simple math here. We don't like this. We don't like being locked away. But think about it. If we all silo ourselves, if we just stay contained completely and we don't go outside that circle, then we can't spread this. We can't give it to our neighbor if we don't go over to our neighbor's house. We can't give it to the person sitting next to us in a restaurant if we don't go to a restaurant. If we stay home, it dies out. And when it dies out, life gets back to normal. And that's what we need to do. The math here is simple. This spreads if we contact other people. It doesn't spread if we don't. So we have to make the sacrifices now. And if we do, this will flatten out. And when it flattens out, it will start going down. I don't like this either, but we have to be willing to do the things we have to do and make the sacrifices. And when we do, this too shall pass. So let's support each other, let's stay calm, and we will get through this, and it will be past us, and we'll have stories to tell for the rest of our lives. We'll see you next time.
Bounce, bounce, all the girlies bounce. Take 'em to my house, turn the party out. Bounce, 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 all the girlies bounce. Take 'em to my house, turn the party out.
You warned me 1,000 times, memories can kill ya, but I didn't hear ya. I thought that I could fly, but woke up on the asphalt. I swear there was the last time. I've always been naive, call it